The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All right, Capital season in the books, heading to the playoffs as the number one seed. Wizard season in the books. They're closer, not close, according to the general manager, who is kind of telling us what we've seen over the last 2 years when they've accumulated a grand total of 33 wins. Yeah, there's probably more of that to come. We'll get to that. And the insufferable Aaron Rodgers. 45 minutes on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, reveling in the fact that he is essentially holding the NFL hostage. And the passive-aggressive way that he does this, must be so satisfying to him. We'll go through some of what he said in the 10 o'clock hour, and we will get to the Capitals and what they're going to be facing in the playoffs as they get started. In case you don't know, it's Monday night against the Montreal Canadiens, and they will play every other night as long as the series goes. And we have seen them go into the playoffs before as a number one seed and home ice and all that stuff, and doesn't make a difference. But we'll see. I mean, they have been an excellent team all year long. They were not expected to be this good. The Alex Ovechkin chase of Wayne Gretzky was supposed to suffocate the team. It did not. They won a whole bunch of games on his way to doing that. Maybe petered out a little bit at the end, but they got everything clinched and they're in great shape going into the playoffs. But let's see what it means because we've seen this before. We'll get to that. And I just wanted to pass along something personal from last night. I really enjoyed this. I have a friend who has a son who plays lacrosse at Landon, and he is going to play at Princeton next year. Terrific player, terrific kid. Met him a few times. I've known the mom for a while. We had a very close mutual friend who passed away, and so they have raised an athlete here, and a student athlete for sure, because he told me that even if lacrosse doesn't work out at Princeton, he's very happy to be at Princeton and is looking for a great academic career there, and I'm sure he'll have one. But anyway, in sports, there's not often success, right? I mean, a great hitter in baseball fails 7 out of 10 times. If he's a 300 hitter, means he's striking out, grounding out, flying out, whatever it is, 7 times out of 10 at-bats. The greatest winner in the history of the NFL, Tom Brady, won 7 Super Bowls. But he played for 23 years, meaning 26 times his season ended in disappointment. Now, he made the Super Bowl 10 times, so he lost 3 of them. And there were other years that he made the playoffs, and it didn't work out in the end. He's one of the greatest winners ever in any sport, and certainly in the NFL. But, 26 out of, what would be 16 times, I guess, 16 times, if my math is right, that he finished with a season that did not live up to what he had hoped for. Just trying to make this point. Look, Alex Ovechkin, 20 years in the NHL, all-time leading goal scorer, has won Stanley Cup championship, meaning 19 times his season didn't end the way he wanted it to end. It's just a fact of life in sports. So when you go to something like this, when you go watch this kid play in a big game at Bullis, they're the 2 of the top teams. They might be 1 and 2 in the area, and this area is really a hotbed for lacrosse. So these are 2 of the best high school teams in the country playing. Nice crowd, beautiful weather last night. You could wear a sweatshirt or a light jacket and feel very comfortable. The sun was going down as the game was starting at 7 o'clock. And I was enjoying sitting next to my friend, and I also saw my cousin there, and it was really a nice atmosphere to watch this. And the reality of life is that the Suns team isn't going to win the game. There's a 50-50 shot of that, and they're playing on the road, so to speak, so there's that. And he might not even have a good game. Well, he had a couple of things that didn't go his way. He missed an open net, but in a game that was tied at 8, he scored the 9th goal in the last few minutes of the game, and Landon went on to win 11-8. So how often does it happen that everything lines up perfectly on a night in sports? Sometimes it does, but as I say, more often than not, it doesn't. And to see that happen last night was really a lot of fun. I really and I don't it's been a long time since I've been to high school games. My son graduated high school 12 years ago. Wow. My daughter 15 years ago, and I guess the last family-related sporting event I went to was my niece's senior day for lacrosse at Wooten, which would have been, I guess, 6 years ago. So, at my stage of life, I'm waiting for the next round when I see my grandchildren play. But, my granddaughter has just started playing soccer. They don't play games yet. They're just learning some skills. And my grandson is 3 months old, and he's a little ways away from playing any sports. But, when you get out on a rare occasion like that and everything lines up perfectly, it's just fun. And sports are not that way. You fail a lot more often than you succeed. That's why it mirrors life. Not everything goes our way every day. And to see on a night where there are things that all line up perfectly to give you that great sports experience, it's worth noting. All right, let me follow up on a lot of the talking we did yesterday about the stadium deal. It's not a done deal yet, but it seems to be on track to happen. There's some pushback from Phil Mendelson from the city council, and we don't know, in fact, if there are the votes to put this through because, according to the reports, the city could have to put up as much as $850 million. The team is paying the bulk of it, $2.5 billion, but as Tom Lavero writes in his column, they're probably going to benefit from this because they will have a chance to develop 180 acres around the stadium. And, in the long run, they're going to make some cash off of this. And as a source told Tom, he said, yes, the majority of the money will be made by the owner. And, you're putting up the money. You should make the money. They're putting up a hell of a lot more, I should say, in the district than they would to stay in Maryland. So that's a part of the picture as well. But there is going to be a group of people who will oppose this. It happens inevitably in every stadium situation. We had pushback when Nats Park was built, and that was all funded by city money. I guess the Learners contributed some once they took over the team in 2006. But the deal to bring the Expos to Washington was predicated on them building a stadium. So there had to be approval from the district for this money for the stadium to open in 2008. And with some last-minute grandstanding by a couple of members of the city council, famously Linda Kropp, it almost didn't happen, but it did happen. And we're glad it happened, right? We got baseball here. As Tom writes, there are 700,000 people living in the district. This may be hard to believe, but most of them are not football fans and would rather see their money go somewhere other than the pockets of the Commanders' owners. But cities are often defined by their professional sports franchises. And if you were here when the Redskins were really good and playing in the District of Columbia, that was a huge sign of civic pride. We didn't have a baseball team then. The hockey team was okay, hadn't won a Stanley Cup yet. And the basketball team hasn't been good since 1979. So the 80s were defined by the success of the Redskins. And when the Redskins were playing a big game, everybody came together. So it's important for that, and it's also the legacy of the mayor, Mayor Bowser, that she has made this happen. She prevented Ted Leonsis from taking his teams to Virginia. That probably was never going to happen, but she came up with the money to make improvements on the arena. There's talk of this special purpose zone on the RFK grounds, which would prohibit construction and use of a stadium area for professional sports teams. There will be other voices, as Tom says, on this. We remember how Jack Kent Cooke was chased out of Virginia when he wanted to build in Potomac Yards in 1993, had the blessing of the governor, Doug Wilder, at the time. Didn't happen there. Chicago's had a bunch of back and forth on their stadium and where it's going to finally be built. And because of the budget cutbacks, and the district is already dealing with $410 million budget cutbacks, it's at the 10-yard line. It should be fairly easy to push it in, but it never is easy in these things, and there always is a lot of grandstanding and dance, as Tom terms it, what goes on year to year on this kind of stuff. All right, Capitals, get ready for the playoffs. Tom actually wrote about this yesterday, the importance of Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby, who came into the league together 20 years ago, comparing them to the Magic and Bird of the NHL. And yesterday, Gary Bettman, the commissioner, was making the rounds at ESPN, showed up on Mike Greenberg's show and discussed the importance of Ovechkin for the league.
I think when you see something that you never expected to see, for some people once in a lifetime, it's not just about hockey fans or sports fans. It's an iconic moment that captures everybody's attention. And Alex has been absolutely amazing. The great one, Wayne, will always be the great one, but Alex did something that nobody ever thought would be accomplished. And now people are saying, well, nobody's going to ever break this record. We'll talk about it, or others will, in 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, someday somebody will. And I was moved. We did pretty much our whole morning on it the next day. Mark Messier was with us. The way Gretzky handled it, I thought, was also fabulous. Right?
He was great. And, I got to spend some quality time with him watching games. When it comes to being passionate, knowledgeable, caring about the sport, Wayne has been the consummate ambassador for the game. He is truly remarkable, and even though he no longer holds that record, I think he holds something like 60 others.
Right. That's right. Most points in a season, that has never been even approached.
And
Most points in a career.
And Alex handled it well. I mean, he really went on a tear at the end. And I think, after almost 2 decades, he was scoring at a pace greater than he ever did. And for somebody at his age playing our game, it was nothing short of phenomenal.
Well, it's part of passing the torch to the next generation. And I think that you're approaching a time in your sport where we will see that. Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby have been sort of the faces of your league. And as they get older, who are the players right now, for the fans who don't know them as well, who are set to take that torch and run with it?
There are people who say Connor McDavid is the best hockey player on the face of the earth. Austin Matthews in Toronto, Cale Makar in Colorado. I mean, the list goes on and on. We're really fortunate that our players probably have never been more skilled, have never been faster. The next generation, as I suppose in all sports, each generation gets better and better and better.
Certainly get more talented. That's been a big debate here on the show as to whether that makes them better. But I'm not going to drag you into my nonsense with all of that. I want to talk about the Four Nations. I know it's a few months in the rearview mirror. When I first started reading promos for it on our show, I thought to myself, I have no idea. I certainly would never have dreamt it would be what it was. What is the tangible impact of that on the sport?
Well, a couple of things. One, it demonstrates the passion that hockey players have for our sport and how much they love to represent their countries. International competition. We're going back to the Olympics next year. International best on best in hockey, I think, is unrivaled. And I think people thought that this was just going to be an exhibition tournament, but our players took it really seriously. The viewership, the attendance was all off the charts. The viewership for the last game, Canada versus U.S., the second time, was like last June's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. In North America, I think we were like 16 or 17 million people watching. And again, like what Alex Ovechkin did, it transcended the sport. And at the point in time where there was a little tension between two great countries, Canada and the U.S., historic friends and allies, I think that amped up the emotion a little bit, but it was truly spectacular. And if you don't think that the players were taking it seriously, look at the number of injuries that resulted from the players playing in that tournament.
That's Gary Bettman with Mike Greenberg yesterday. And what was going on, well, still is going on with this administration and Canada, certainly amped things up for that final. Turned out to be a great game, which didn't hurt. Now, as Bettman said, they're going to have the Olympics next year. So this is not an annual event. And then the year after the Olympics, they're going to go back to I don't know if they'll go back to the All-Star game because nobody would be excited about that. But there won't be this four-country, four-nation tournament as we had this year. I guess the plan is to have it in 3 years, and I think there'll be an appetite for it. As far as the NBA, this is it for them. If they, it appears that they're going to do this because what they did this year didn't work either. The All-Star game, the players ruined it. They had a chance to keep it going, but they don't take it seriously. It's too bad because there have been some very good NBA All-Star games over the years, including the one that took place here in 2001. It was outstanding. Allen Iverson was the MVP of the game. And in the second half, Larry Brown, who was coaching the East and Iverson's coach with the Sixers, put him together with Dikembe Mutombo of the Hawks. They made a great comeback. And that particular year, it doesn't always happen this way, but that particular year, the trade deadline was after the All-Star game. So the Sixers made a trade for Mutombo and brought him in, and he and Iverson made the finals and actually won a game against the unbeatable Lakers with Kobe and Shaq. That's what the All-Star game could be, and it happened this century. But the way that the players treated it, they made it a joke, and they had to do away with it. And this is it. And I don't think it's going to work as well as hockey for this main reason. You've got players playing for their individual countries. The plan here would be to take the U.S.-born players and play them against an international all-star team. I don't think that's going to have the juice that this had. I just don't. Players from Germany and Canada and wherever else they're from playing against the U.S., I don't think it's going to have that, but that's about all they got left. If that doesn't work, then just do away with it. Let these guys go to Cabo for a week and then resume the season. I think that's probably the best way to do it. All right, coming up, Tony and Mike on a letter that Ashton Jeanty wrote to all 32 teams as we get closer to the draft and what he said about that. And more from Dan Quinn from the Glue Guys podcast, including what the expectations are for year 2 for the Commanders. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We're going to talk to Walt Williams in just over an hour. He will help to promote the Capital Classic, which keeps going, and it makes me feel good about that. I spent a lot of time talking to Bob Gagan towards the end of his life. We were looking at maybe doing a film or a book that just never came together, but Bob created the first Capital Classic at the old Capitol Center in 1974 and got Moses Malone to play in it, and that was a really big deal. And over the years, it was one of the top high school all-star games in the country, and the best players who ever played were in it. Jordan, LeBron, Magic, they all played in this Capital Classic. And it's unfortunately, it hasn't had the juice it's had in recent years or the sponsorship, but the fact that it's going to be the 52nd one a week from tomorrow at the Care First Arena in Southeast, that's good. Things like that should continue. And if you've ever been to one, it's really cool to see guys who you will be watching, in some cases in the NBA in a few years, and many of them in college the following year and the years to come. It's cool to see them right at the beginning. So that'll be a week from tomorrow. Meantime, some more football yak, and we got the draft coming up less than a week. It's next Thursday night, and been for years now. My friend Mel Kiper has been saying, "Oh no, you don't take a running back in the first round anymore." Well, off what we saw from Saquon Barkley in the Eagles' run to the Super Bowl championship, the thinking has changed. And the best running back coming out this year is coming out of Boise State. His name is Ashton Jeanty. And he wrote a letter in the Players Tribune to the 32 teams about the kind of player that they would be getting if they draft him. I saw his interview with Rich Eisen. He's very impressive. Very impressive. Not that an interview necessarily means how good of a player you're going to be, but this guy clearly has his head on straight. And Tony and Mike took a look at the letter that he wrote to the Players Tribune and what they can assess for Ashton Jeanty as he makes his move to the NFL.
Jeanty said, "Draft me, you won't be sorry." Here's a direct quote. Quote, "If you pick me, it's simple. I'm coming to your franchise to do what Saquon Barkley and the Eagles just did," unquote. Here's another quote. Quote, "It's tackle football. You know what I'm saying? I'd draft a guy they can't tackle," unquote. No shortage of confidence there. Wilbon, does Jeanty make a persuasive case to NFL GMs that he can become the next Saquon Barkley?
I don't know about GMs, Tony, but he persuaded me. And I don't need him to be the next Saquon Barkley because I don't want him to go to a second team particularly if my team is lucky enough to draft him at 10, if he falls past the Raiders. Saquon Barkley had to do that, and he also had to have a horrific knee injury. So I don't need him to be the next Saquon Barkley. Just be the Ashton Jeanty that we saw in college if he can carry that to the next level. And as you know, Tony, once upon a time, the position where performance and talent best translated immediately was running back. For decades, for generations, this happened. So Ashton Jeanty, to me, again, I'm hoping he falls past the Raiders all the way to my team at 10. Because we got pictures of guys in that building in Lake Forest wearing 34 and 40 on their chests of all time. Great running backs. Chicago knows what to do with one. If these other GMs don't know what to do with them, let him pass. Let him go somewhere because I believe he can play. I believe he's a stud.
So I loved what he wrote, and I want to love the kid. But before we get too carried away, there is something I have to point out. That Saquon Barkley is listed as 6 feet, 233 pounds. And Ashton Jeanty is listed at 5'8.5" to 11. Now, there have been great short running backs. Barry Sanders is listed at 5'8". Emmitt Smith is listed at 5'9". They're all-time running backs. But would I be concerned at 5'8.5"? I might actually be concerned. Now, he was remarkably durable in college because I got more numbers here. He carried the ball 374 times last year. It's almost 30 times a game. He averaged 7 yards a carry. Mike, and his yak was 1,900 yards, the most in college. So you can't tackle him. You can't. So I would think he's, the way we led into this or the way he writes this letter, you think, oh, he's a second or third round choice. He's a first round choice. Mel Kiper says, and you're alluding to this, that the Raiders are going to draft him at 6. So, yeah, I would draft him too, right? He looks like
Tony,
he's great.
Particularly
and he's coming
a creative
around, Mike.
offensive play caller, offensive play caller. And if you've got a quarterback and if you've got a line, if you were playing in Detroit for Ben Johnson last year with that line and that quarterback and those receivers, you put him in a lineup?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Give him to me.
We have reached a turn in the era where this year running backs were important. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson.
Yes.
So, I mean, he may have come along at the right time.
There was a time when you'd sell your soul for a top running back. And the famous incident where Santa Claus was booed at a Philadelphia Eagles game in 1968. It was around Christmas time, and a guy dressed up in a Santa suit, they threw snowballs at him and booed him. And everybody, what are you booing Santa for? You know why the Eagles fans were upset? They were upset because they had won a road game the week before and were going to be picking number 2 in the draft behind the Buffalo Bills, who could draft O.J. Simpson. The Eagle fans wanted O.J. that much that they were just in a foul mood that the team had won and they weren't going to be able to draft O.J. And we went to the years of Mel saying, don't take a running back in the first round, to now, what we saw with Saquon Barkley, if you have one of them, you got a really good chance. The game is changing, and it's, maybe it's the tweaking of the rules, because I think the league is looking at the quarterback position right now, and where you got now the market $60 million a year for a top quarterback. I think it's entirely possible Jaden Daniels becomes the first $100 million a year quarterback. And I don't know if the owners really like that. So maybe they want to take a little bit of the emphasis away from the quarterback and put it back on the running back position, which has been undervalued for a long time. But if you have one, it can take you a long way. So I've been talking about this podcast that I've stumbled upon, and I really, really like it. It's co-hosted by Alex Smith and Shane Battier, 2 great athletes and 2 really smart thinkers. Now, Alex Smith, I got to tell you, the interviews I saw him do in the years that he played here, not much. He didn't have much to say. But if you've been watching him on ESPN, he's really good. He's really a smart guy. And Shane Battier, everybody knows how smart he is. Played at Duke and played a long time in the NBA. Both of them would be very successful in whatever they did, even if they never played sports. But they do this podcast, and what they do is they try to get to the bottom of what makes people great. You know, what is that thing that makes them exceptional in what they do? And they had Dan Quinn on last week. I played yesterday some of how he got through his journey and how he knew that as a position coach, if he wanted to be a coordinator, he'd have to have experience as a coordinator. So he left the NFL to go to college to do that, got that opportunity, which led him to become a head coach. Now we get to what he did here in Washington. He comes into an organization that had been a cesspool, an absolute cesspool. They had won 4 games the year before, and even though they were under new ownership, it was still the Ron Rivera era, the coach-centric operation, and they had to totally gut everything. Rivera was out, and you bring in a real general manager in Adam Peters, and you bring in a real coach in Dan Quinn, who does nothing but coach, and obviously it worked out pretty well, right? They made the NFC Championship game. And one of the things that Quinn said on this Glue Guys podcast, hosted by Alex Smith and Shane Battier, is that he didn't even discuss the past when he got in. I've heard of stories, players have told me this, that when a new coach arrives, he'll say, well, you guys sucked under the last guy, and that's why I'm here. And he really sucked. And I remember talking to Monty Coleman about this when Ron Lynn came in as the defensive coordinator under new coach Norv Turner. Monty's last year in the NFL was Norv's first year in Washington. And he said, you know, here he's ripping Richie Pettibone. They loved Richie Pettibone. Richie Pettibone is one of the great defensive coordinators in the history of the game. And here comes Ron Lynn. Who the hell is Ron Lynn? And he's ripping Richie Pettibone. No, it doesn't work that way. Quinn just took it from point A. As soon as he walked in the door, that's when the new regime started. Whatever happened in the past was the past. And here's how he explained it.
I've been on the staff of the new coach. I knew what it was like to, you know, old guys, new guys, and I just didn't need that. And I wasn't part of anything from the past. So I just took the view of saying, like, if I referred to the past, that, hey, I know what the team may have done before, whether it was travel or anything else, but like, this is how we're going to get down from here on. And I just kept my vision on that. And then every coach that was here, that even if I wasn't keeping, I wanted to meet with them. Just a one-on-one, like past, like commanders, or that, just like coaching brotherhood, man. Like, hey, I'm sorry we don't have a spot, but I just wanted to see you face to face and let you know, appreciate, you know, the work. You never know where it goes in the NFL. And so you've been surprised how many people wanted just to give me some insight. And so all I had to do was like, listen some. This might be something, this might be something. Hey, man, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And you don't know. You just listen. And then I didn't want a lot of bias, honestly. You'd be surprised how many times, like if we had traded for Alex, then the trainers call there, and then the personnel guys. And like, before you know it, this is what they said about him. This is what they said about him. And I was like, I remember many times, like, I'm good, man. Like, I want my own opinion of this man. Like, I didn't want a bias coming from another club on somebody, especially if they had had some issues with them, you know? So, like, I wanted to start fresh with somebody. And so that was me here to say, I knew some things would change, but I wasn't part of that. And so all I wanted to look at it was like, this is how we're going to get down from here on. And if you're down with that, then like there'll be a spot for you here. Yeah. And I said it to the players too, like, we're not going to be for everybody. And I was very comfortable saying that, knowing that there weren't going to be any sacred cows here. Like, Adam and I were very specific to make sure, like, if we're really going to build a team, like, you have to have standards that apply to everybody on the team, not just to this crew or just to this crew. And Shane, you can probably relate to that more than anybody in the NBA, where that can be especially challenging with guarantees and other things that go on. But in the NFL, we were committed to say, like, if they're not down with it, like, they're not going to be here, and we would move on from people. And so we just took that approach. It wasn't like a threat, though. I just wanted to make sure it was like, this is how we're going to do things moving forward.
And that may be how the NFL, where all sports really differ from the real world. I have hired people before, both in radio and the apartment business, and I don't really know how you can necessarily do this with not having an opinion based on what you hear from other people, because that's important for references, right? If you don't know this person, it's a little different in the NFL, where you're as they say, your tape is your DNA. Like, If you can play, you can play, and trained football eyes will find that. When you're hiring for a position and you've never worked with this person before, you want to rely on at least the people that they worked for before you, or if it's, especially in the radio business, is very common. There's a really good chance he or she has worked with somebody that you know. You want to find out, you don't want to have big surprises when they come in. But Quinn was able to do that. He said, I don't want to have a preconceived notion about you, so I'm not going to ask other people about you before you come in. Interesting. This last part of it, and this is what everybody wants to know. Okay, and this is the downside of going as far as they did in year one. I think most people would have taken the Dianu approach. It would have been enough if they slipped into the playoffs as a wild card and played one playoff game and got out, but they went all the way to the NFC Championship game. And so now you got to follow that up. Expectations, he says, for year two.
The expectation, honestly, is I expect us to be a lot better.
Yeah.
And that starts with me. How am I going to improve? And so we call them all work on. So each player will have their individual part of that. Whether it's, Jaden, I visited with him, what that would be. I visited with the other assistants. What are they, working on? So collectively, Alex, if all of us dig in to get better, that's my expectation, because as you know, man, there's so many other factors and schedules and who you play and injuries. So just wanted to absolutely go for it about getting better, and whatever that looks like for the QC coach, who I'm hoping is going to become a position coach. So at the rookie camp, we're going to film his meetings and help develop him, just like we're going to develop the player. And so that's my expectation, man. Dig in hard and absolutely go for it to get better.
The score takes care of itself,
Yeah, it's so far away, man, to think about other things. I just want to make I'm hoping that the team that we're bringing in is really a competitive group. This is going to be a hard team to make, and a lot of positions have some legit comp that's going to elevate a lot of people. And so if we get that part right, the best teams have huge competitions amongst positions and practice and offense and defense, and that's what I'd hope we could create here.
On that competing note, because I've heard you guys do this, you compete at everything, right?
Yep.
It's just built into the culture. I'd heard, I think a lot of this comes from your time in Seattle, which I was in that division, and I'd heard these stories about everything, from the TV
why not?
to Tell the Truth Monday. And, I think from my perspective, I think the thing that's cool about it is the stigma of winning and losing. When it's just in everything, all you're left with is just compete. Right? Again, you're not as concerned about or consumed by the fear of a failure, right? No, just bring it, man. There's going to be a winner and loser every day.
It takes a little while to get to that space, but you get there because everybody's competing all the time at a lot of spots. And so we compete going over bags to start practice. There's a score, who keeps it. And those are moments just have fun doing it. But after the next competition's over, we're on to something else. And so there's not resentment towards the teammate or the other coach. It's just, man, okay, on to the next. If somebody wins, inevitably somebody does, and all the ones, we blow the horn, we go to the next drill. So I don't allow for tons of celebrating or things to go on after that particular one, because there's another part of practice to get to. But we acknowledge who won, but then we get on to the next thing. But you're right. It's just it's harder for early on. Is this cool? If we're doing this all the time, this is how we do things.
I can't help but think it affected your guys' record in the fourth quarter when you guys this last year in one-score games when you guys were kicking ass and focused.
That's a cool metric to be good at. That's got to create some pride.
We also lost some really close ones too, and we had to go through those lessons to apply them. And we had lost at one point 3 in a row, in November, and those are ones that you find out a lot. But the standards of a Bobby Wagner, of others, when maybe outside the walls people talk, but inside, hey man, just whatever we got to do to dig in together, we'll like the results at the end.
That's Commanders coach Dan Quinn on the Glue Guys podcast. I would urge you to watch this. I watched a few of them. They're really good. Excellent. And as a matter of fact, on Monday, I'm going to play some of the Wright Thompson conversation that took place this week. Wright Thompson to me, is the best feature writer in sports these days. And there are some good ones. Joe Posnanski is excellent. Seth Wickersham, more of a reporter, but also can be a feature writer. He's outstanding. Don Van Natta, who's won a Pulitzer Prize. These are great writers. I grew up reading Frank DeFord. Couldn't wait to get home on Thursday, read him in Sports Illustrated. Lee Montvale, who was also with the Boston Globe for many, many years. These guys write great features, and they get inside the person. Gary Smith, legendary at Sports Illustrated, also retired now. So Wright Thompson is in that league, and he kind of explains how he gets to that core. And it's really interesting stuff, and I'm going to play some of that on Monday. But if you want to watch the whole thing, it's up now. It's called the Glue Guys Podcast. Alex Smith and also Shane Battier, former great player at Duke and in the NBA. They co-hosted. Lee Corso. I don't know whether you call this ironic, whatever you call it, coincidence. On the day that it's announced that Lee Corso is going to do his last college game day on August the 30th, there was a nice story in the Washington Times written by Liam Griffin about mascots. Now, I don't know if this is fortunate, unfortunate, but I guess everybody's got to have a legacy. And for most people, the legacy of Lee Corso will be he used to put on a mascot head right before they would go to kickoff at noon on ESPN, on the Game Day show, which is one of the best things that ESPN does. But I mean, that's short shrift, in my opinion. Lee Corso has a rich coaching background. He actually was at the University of Maryland when he was recruiting a quarterback out of Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, named Joe Namath. And Joe Namath wanted to go to the University of Maryland, but he didn't have the grades to do it. And he wound up at Alabama, and the rest is history. So Corso didn't get his guy, but he was there as an assistant for a while. Then he went to the Naval Academy and then got his opportunity to be a head coach at Louisville and later at Indiana. And then, in an age where he was far from ready to retire, maybe he could catch on somewhere as an assistant or a mid-level job, he wound up at ESPN. And much like Dick Vitale, who was also a successful coach, I mean, he makes fun of himself for being a bad coach. He did a hell of a job at a school called Detroit Mercy, got them to the second round of the NCAA tournament. He got hired by the Detroit Pistons. Very few guys who ever coach basketball get to the NBA. He was there for like a year and a half, and he got fired at a time when ESPN was getting off the ground. Coincidence, whatever it is, one thing leads to another. He's on ESPN, and he's really defined their basketball coverage for 40-some years, right? I mean, going back to 1979. So he's been a remarkable addition to ESPN, as Lee Corso has been. Now, Corso is approaching 90. Vitale is 85. Vitale, as far as I know, has not announced any kind of retirement, though his voice is really tough now. He's battled cancer valiantly, raised millions and millions of dollars for childhood cancer research. I mean, he's a fine man. And really has helped to increase the enjoyment of people for college basketball, as Lee Corso has done for football. But, Lee Corso's legacy will be, he was the guy that put on the mascot head right before the games were starting. That's really not it. There's a lot more to him than that. He played football at Florida State, was an excellent player. His roommate was Burt Reynolds, okay? You live long enough, you have some crazy intersections through the course of your life. Anyway, before I get to Corso, I just want to point out this Liam Griffin story about the mascot. And he profiles Ken Solomon, who was with the Denver Nuggets for 30 years as Rocky, the mountain lion mascot. You may be familiar with him. And then he gets into, what it involves to be a mascot. He's actually got a podcast called Between the Fur. He's 59 years old now, and he's had former mascots join him, current mascots. And he said, I had to work to keep weight on. Oh, we should all be so lucky because you sweat so much. After games, I would be on IVs lots of the time. I'd need oxygen. The Nationals have the racing presidents, and they have to put on 12-foot, 50-pound costumes in brutal heat, so you got to hydrate pretty well for that. They're looking for people who have athletic experience, but also the ability to balance this costume on their bodies. The presidents aren't above racing dirties. The performers are known to egg on one another throughout the season. One year, a performer throughout the year could outrun an opponent on a bicycle. The Nationals game presentation set it up. The president on foot toasted his bike-riding compatriot. And then they talk about all the sweating that goes on here. It's rather disgusting. The jerseys and the pants are washed after every appearance, but the heads have to be doused with disinfecting spray and left in front of blowing fans just to dry it out. And they say, after a couple of games in July, they get really stinky, I can imagine. And if you're wondering, by the way, what mascots make, when Solomon retired, the Nuggets offered the next Rocky a salary of $70,000 to $130,000, I guess, on what he could do. The Orioles, if you haven't been out to the stadium recently, they started last Memorial Day with the Frank's race, hot dog race, and more than 200 people applied to become one of the racing hot dogs. So pretty cool if you can get a job as a mascot. It's a little sweaty, it's a little stinky, but maybe worth the price. Anyway, the headgear for Corso, how did that begin? Started in 1996 when it was a Penn State game at Ohio State. Kirk Herbstreit was new to the crew, played college football at Ohio State. His wife, I believe, had been a cheerleader. And he asked his wife if she could come up with a mascot head, and the rest is history. Here's how it was explained.
Kirk's wife had connections within the cheer squad and was able to get the headgear.
I like Ohio State 24-13.
All right, good pick. I can tell you one thing.
I'll never forget sitting there, and I'm looking over at him. It's the craziest thing to see Brutus, his head, on Lee Corso with a tie on in a suit.
Let's just examine the Brutus head. It's a head representing a nut, a two-tone nut.
I like the Buckeyes!
With a little hat, like the kind Woody Hayes used to wear with the block O on it. So it's ridiculous looking. You can't help but laugh.
And it just clicked. It was like, that works.
For Brutus and Kirk, I'm Chris. Goodbye.
That was his thing. Before he had his stroke, he was really good as an analyst too, and still is mentally there. It's just because of the stroke he can't express himself like he used to, and he gets emotional at times. This was before an Army-Navy game when some of the players that he worked with, when they beat Army in 1967, they came to honor him. This is Lee Corso, not necessarily the cartoonish guy who puts on a mascot head. It's a guy who's a real coach and inspired these men all those years ago. And this is what unfolded as they brought out the cape that you remember, see the players on the sidelines or the cadets with the capes and so forth. They gave one to Lee Corso, and this had to be, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago.
Coach, we got about a dozen of football players off of that team here that defeated that strong Army team in 1967 due to your innovations.
Thank you.
And there are literally dozens of players watching on TV around the nation and around the world.
There they are. Those guys right there.
There are those guys.
Oh, man, look at that.
And people know about this innovation. This man not only touched the midshipmen that he coached, but a lot of other people in midshipmen at the Naval Academy, a true patriot. You were very important to us, and we want to present you with the B robe that I won from a cadet, Greg Camp, in 1967. That's a 50-year-old B robe, and that's the real deal, Coach.
Man, that's
Put this thing on.
How about that?
That's the real deal, Coach.
Listen, I can't tell you. The 3 years I spent at the Naval Academy were 3 of the most enjoyable years ever in my coaching career. I owe a lot to the Naval Academy. I got my first head coaching job at Louisville because of the influence of the people of the Naval Academy, and you guys have been having a great year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for thousands of people.
Thank you.
It was great.
And thank you guys for coming out. Coach is going to have a new robe next year. This is pretty awesome. I tell you what, these guys, they know how to take care of a robe. Look at that. That was great.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Look at that one.
Yeah, look at that.
I think it's nice.
Yeah, John,
this is
God bless you, John.
Yeah, and the stories you'd hear about Corso on the road, the other guys would say, like 8 o'clock, hey, coach, let's go out for dinner. And he'd already be in his bathrobe and slippers. And no, I'm going to stay in for the night. That's the bro reference that's familiar. If you're wondering about how the head predictions went, he was 286 and 144 with another game to go. And they picked the best games of the week. So it's not like, they're playing, like Texas Tech versus like Texas Southern or something like that. They're playing, the best team. So he did pretty well in picking these games. And, the stroke happened in 2009, so that diminished him some, but he stayed with it. And Herb Street looked out for him. That's, that relationship was very interesting. And Herb Street said, it's because that's how I was raised. He's a son of a coach. You always respect the coach. Before, he took over, before Herb Street came on in 1996, Craig James had done it. And James had this, argumentative thing going on with Corso. And this was before Corso suffered the stroke, and Herb Street didn't do that with him. And in the end, it was very, very nice to see the relationship with the two of them as they were together on game day all those years. He started, Corso did, 1987. It was still done under the Bristol studios. It wasn't until like 5 years later that they started to take the show on the road, and that's when it really became magical. And most people at ESPN will say, and I think there's some really good shows there, including the one that Scott Van Pelt does at midnight, but they say that is the gold standard for ESPN for shows. It's College Game Day and the way they make it fun and do it on the fly, which is not easy to do. It looks a lot easier than it is. That's often a key in broadcasting. If it looks easy, that means they're doing something right. And it's not something that everybody can do. If it looks like you can do it, you probably can't. It takes you a lot of work and experience to do it. But hats off to Lee Corso, because he did for college football in many ways what Dick Vitale did for basketball. There's a Pat 40 column up on that on SI.com that I would urge you to read. Very, very good stuff. Walt Williams will join us next as we preview the 52nd Capitol Classic coming up a week from tomorrow. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
It is always great to talk to the Wizard, Walt Williams, one of the great players in the history of Maryland basketball and one of the most heroic figures in the history of the team, and we'll get to that shortly. But Walt is on to help promote the Capitol Classic, which is coming up a week from tomorrow at the Care First Arena in Southeast. And Walt Williams played in the 1988 Capitol Classic for the Capitol All-Stars after a great career at Crossland High School. Do you remember, Walt, what happened in that game?
I do not, man. That was a long time ago. So I do remember playing in the Cap Center, though, playing in that game. But, I don't remember anything that happened in that game.
Well, you personally, you had a rough night shooting, 1 for 6, but your teammates didn't help you any. I'll give you the final score, 112-83. So wow. You played in a lot of winning basketball games, but that wasn't one of them. But you played with some great players, Gerard Mustaf, who joined you at the University of Maryland, Hubert Davis, who's now the head coach at North Carolina after a great career and a career in the NBA, and Jay Bias. Do you remember Jay Bias was in this game? That was the Len Bias's brother who was tragically killed in a shooting a couple of years later. Do you remember that?
Yes, we actually played in the same conference in high school team, so I played against him for several years.
Yeah, and you have a pretty deep connection with Len. As I understand it, right, you grew up, that was your guy, that was your idol, and that was the big reason that you went to the University of Maryland.
Oh, absolutely. I grew up as a kid as a Georgetown Hoya fan, and then my dad, he's from North Carolina, so he took me to a Carolina Terp game, and I saw Len Bias in person, man, and that was, his jump shot was just the prettiest thing I had ever seen. So, I started watching the Terps from that point on, so it was Len Bias and just the purity of his game that turned me into a Terp fan. And it was definitely an honor to play against his younger brother at the high school ranks. Very talented player as well. Played against him in the championship game, in my junior year as well. So we had a lot of battles, but Len was just one of a kind. Just a great player. As a matter of fact, me and Tony Massenberg, one of my former college teammates, we wrote a book about the impact that he had on not only us but the community as a whole, called The Lessons from Lenny. So he's a guy who had a tremendous impact on my career, and so I wanted to honor that.
Yeah, and you did honor him not just with that, but the way you followed in his footsteps at Maryland, and you were part of bringing the program back. If people don't remember, after the tragic Bias death, which happened in June of 1986, Lefty Driesell was forced out. Bob Wade came in. What was that recruiting battle like? I mean, did he really have to do much recruiting? Were you pretty much committed to going to Maryland?
Well, no, not much recruiting, man. I went on a couple of visits. I went to Villanova to see Coach Massimino, the Tar Heels to see Coach Dean Smith, Coach Chaney at Temple. But, at the end of the day, I thought that I was supposed to do that, and I was following protocol. But at the end of the day, in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to the University of Maryland. I just told you about seeing a guy like Len Bias and wanting to follow in his footsteps. But also, my family is here. My mom, my dad, my sister, I just wanted to play in front of my family and friends. My high school girlfriend, she was here, and so like I said, I wanted to play in front of my family and friends. And a lot of kids nowadays are shy away from that, but for me, I wanted to do that. I wanted to show the people that I loved my progress over the years, and so that's why I looked at it as important, staying home and going to a school like University of Maryland.
Well, here's where the real importance of Walt Williams kicks in. The first year, freshman under Bob Wade, rough year, 9 wins. Bob Wade gets fired. Gary Williams comes in. And Gary knew that there was an investigation by the NCAA. He did not think the punishment would be anything like this. But they said to him, okay, there's no TV, no postseason play for 2 years. And when that happens, it's different now. You can go whenever you want to go. But in those days, if you wanted to transfer and there was no probation or anything coming from your school, you could leave and you'd have to sit out a year. But you had the opportunity, knowing that you would not have any chance to play in the NCAA tournament or on TV, to go to Georgetown and join two of the greatest big men they ever had in Alonzo Mourning and Dikembe Mutombo. That would have been 3 lottery picks without having to sit out a year, and you chose to stay at Maryland. Why?
At that point in my career, those guys on my team, they were not just my teammates. They were my brothers. They were like family to me. And so imagine walking out on your family, in tough times. Who does that? And so for me, that's what it was about. It wasn't necessarily about the basketball part of it. I just had an attachment to those guys, and, it was tough times, and I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to abandon them.
Well, that was as unselfish a thing as you'll ever see, and Gary Williams gives you an awful lot of credit for that, because he says you kept them competitive. And not only was it a program that had some respect when you were playing, but when he went out to recruit, it wasn't a program that was at the dregs of the ACC. And so he says, it's very possible that he would have gotten fired if you would have left. There'd be no 2002 NCAA championship banner hanging up there. I mean, you must take pride in what you did in those days, right?
Absolutely. At the time, you just out there and you're playing hard and you're stepping out on the court. For me, I just looked at it every game. When I walked through the tunnel, it wasn't about if I do this or that, I can get to the NBA and things like that. So in those days, it wasn't publicized as much where people were from. So I didn't even really know the NBA was a reality.
Wow.
So for me, it was just, when I walked through the tunnel, man, I was just thinking to myself, man, I'm gonna show everybody today that's watching this game today. I'm gonna show them that I'm the best dude on this court, and I'm gonna do everything I can to try to help us win. And that's all it was about. And then you just stack up those days, and it turned out to be successful for me. But that was my mindset going in, and I didn't really think about the other aspects of it. Oh, you're not going to be on TV, or you can be on this particular team, and you guys can you can be seen a lot more. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of that. Like I said earlier, it was just about my family, sticking through hard times, and then giving it everything I got to help us get through that. And the result of that was a lot of these kids in this area, they saw that, and they wanted to be a part of it. And even though we wasn't one of the top teams in the ACC, the ACC was certainly the best conference in basketball, no question. And so we wasn't one of the top teams, though, but we were very, like you said, we were very competitive every night, and we were right in it. We were right in the thick of it, right in the middle of the pack at times throughout my career. And so I think that the high school players from this area saw that, and they wanted to come behind that and mimic that. And they saw the support of the fans and how everyone responded to the way I played and my teammates played. And I think that a lot of kids, a lot of the athletes that came behind me, like Johnny Rhodes, Dwayne Simpkins, Joe Smith, a lot of those guys wanted to be a part of that.
No question. And for a guy who didn't think the NBA was necessarily a reality, he was the number 7 pick overall and played 12 years. So it was truly a reality for you. And I wonder what you look at in today's game, where there is no loyalty that you talked about, where players are looking for the next paycheck. They move from school to school. It's not unusual now to see a guy play for 4 different schools over the course of his career. You know, what are your thoughts on the current state of the game, given the experience that you had back in the early 90s?
I think those elements have definitely changed the landscape of the game. When you're talking about payments being involved, you can leave and go play right away from year to year. That turns it into sort of like a free agency type of environment. And, hey, I think that you can't go into someone's personal background and say, hey, you should do this or do that. It's according to what that person feels the best for their family. So that's individualized. At the same token, the environment has changed for the coaches as well. In my day, you would never hear of a kid being offered a scholarship and then having him asked to give it back. You know, that was unheard of. Would never be able to recruit another kid. But in this environment where it's free agency, you can go into the portal or what have you. Now the coaches are asking a kid to, hey, look, this might not be a good fit for you. I need that scholarship to go into the portal to get somebody that can help me right away. So it leads to that side of the equation as well. So this environment has to be regulated in some form or fashion because it hurts both sides.
And I'm sure you got to know Kevin Willard over the last few years as Walt, as you know, works with Johnny Holiday and Chris Nocky on the radio broadcast. What about the way he made his exit from Maryland?
Oh, man, I thought that could have certainly been done in a different way. I think that things could have been discussed and agreements could have been made or what have you, concessions or whatever could have been made because, of course, we want to put our best foot forward here at the University of Maryland. We are a traditional school, and we've had a great tradition in the past, and we want to rekindle that. Had a successful season this year, getting to the Sweet 16, and then it has an unfortunate ending like that overshadows all the success that took place this year. So it was unfortunate. Wish it could have been handled in a better way, but hey, what's done is done. Now it's time to pick up the pieces and move on and continue the success.
Have you met Buzz Williams?
No, I haven't met him yet.
What are your impressions of what you've seen from him in his previous stops?
Well, yeah, he's always had teams that are tough-minded, tough on the defensive end, He's had success everywhere he's been. You know, and you see the players, they really rally around him. So he seems like he's a player's coach in that respect. And so it'll be interesting to see how he responds here at the University of Maryland. And for me, like I said earlier, we are a traditional school. We are used to looking at our bench and looking at familiar faces. And so hopefully that can take place in some respect. You know, like I said, Buzz Williams has had success everywhere he's went.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been there long,
Right.
but he's there. So we're hoping that this can turn out to be something that has some longevity or something that leads to that.
Yeah, you get a little spoiled with Lefty and Gary staying as well as long as they did and doing the job that they did at Maryland. Before I let you go, what's your involvement in the Capital Classic? It, by the way, is at Care First Arena. It's a week from tomorrow. And what will you be doing for this game?
Well, yeah, I'll be coaching the U.S. team, you know, and so Tony Doyle and Pete, they started helping Bob Geegan with the Capital Classic game years ago. Then they took it over in like 2017.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to bring the game back to its glory days. You know, the beneficiary of the game is the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Greater Washington area. This is the 52nd game in its history, the longest running high school All-American game in the country, founded by Bob Geegan. So 3 years later, you know, Bob Geegan founded the McDonald's All-American game as well. This is a dude that's very important in the high school ranks. As you know, what makes this game so special and different from any other All-Star game is the fact that for 52 years, the best of the best in the DMV have played against the best in the country. So, and this year is a special treat. For the first time, the best girls in the DMV will be going head-to-head in the preliminary game. You know, so tickets are $25 for 2 games and can be purchased at Ticketmaster.com or go to www.thecapitalclassic.com.
Fabulous. And if you go to Xfinity Center and you look up at that 2002 National Championship banner, also look for the number 42 jersey hanging up there because Walt Williams had a lot to do with that. Always good to talk to you, Walt. Best of luck with the game, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
That's Walt Williams. And again, you cannot overstate the importance that he has had to the University of Maryland basketball program. Never got the opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament, but the success that Gary Williams had post-Walt, he will be the first to tell you that it had a lot to do with Walt Williams. I want to thank Walt Williams for coming on today. Again, the Capital Classic a week from tomorrow at the Care First Arena. Walt will be coaching in that. Thanks to Isaac and Harris for running the show, and all of you listen. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.